Hello and welcome to the Motherhood Village podcast. I'm on with a very special guest. I have Dr. Elizabeth Vainder, who is a
Yes.
board certified pediatrician caring for infants and children in South Florida for over 20 years. Dr. Vainder grew up in Miami in a Cuban family and is fluent in English and Spanish. For 6 years, she worked in public health clinic operated by the University of Miami and Jackson Memorial Hospital, caring for patients with no insurance or Medicaid. And in 2007, she joined Pediatric Associates and provided private pediatric care for newborns, children, adolescents, and young adults for 14 years. Wow. She is also a certified health coach. Practicing pediatrics in South Florida has allowed Dr. V to care for children from all over the world. Welcome. How are you today?
I'm good, and thank you for having me. So
I'm
nice
so
to be
excited
here.
to speak. Yes, so excited to speak with you. Jackson Memorial, I actually did a tour with them. I brought like doulas and I like touring with hospitals to kind of see the resources, right? I'm all about sharing resources. And I was so impressed with the work that they're doing to really tie that gap between the prenatal birth experience with the mom. So yeah, they're doing really good work.
Yeah, they're always right at the cutting edge.
Yes.
Uh,
Okay, but let's dive into you. So I
yes.
always ask my guests to share their favorite book or one that they would highly recommend with my listeners.
So I love this question because I love to read. So I'm always looking for book ideas, but I actually chose two. One is actually for children because one of my favorite things to do with my kids was to read them bedtime stories when they were small. And my favorite book for them was The Kissing Hand by Audrey Penn. And The Kissing Hand is a great book because it's a very simple way to teach children how to handle a tough transition. The book is about going to school, and the child is scared to go to school. And the mother teaches them a very simple way to connect with her when she's not there. And I think that's such an important lesson because life is about change and teaching kids tangible, simple ways to manage their emotions when they're big emotions and knowing what to do when they're feeling those things, giving them like a simple step. In that book, it was about just the mom would kiss the child's hand and he just had to know that kiss was in his hand. And he could look at it and kind of put it to his cheek if he needed it. And that's just such a simple but powerful way to teach a child, like, hey, you can do this. I'm here with you, even though I'm not physically present. So I love that book. I really do. And then as far as for me, I'm always reading. And one of the books when I was thinking about this was the book about the power of now by
I've heard of
Eckhart
that.
Tolle. And that book is about being present. And I think as moms and women, just in general, we spend so much of our day worrying about the past, like what we did or what we could have done better, or like
What
analyzing
we
what
didn't
we,
do. Yes,
yes,
yes.
exactly. Or worrying about the future. Like we spend so much time like, is this going to happen? What do I do about this? What do I do about that? And it made me stop to realize that life is about living in the moment. And so sometimes we have to take a step back and say, hey, these mundane, everyday things, that's living, that's life. The dinner you're making, sitting down with your kids, that bedtime story, that's your life. I love books that shift my mindset. And I love to see things differently because I think we all see things differently. So when someone makes me kind of think of things in a different way, it makes me curious because I'm always growing. I mean, we're all
Sure.
learning always and growing. So I really thought that book was powerful. It was definitely a deep book, like you have to focus, but it really, I think the overall message about being present and not worrying so much about the past and worrying about the future, it really, I think it struck a chord with me for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think in parenthood, because I mean I'll talk to my dad's listening to this as well. Like I think that's something that's so important. And I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Amen,
Yes.
the psychiatrist, the children's. I was just listening to him on the Jay Shetty podcast, and one of the biggest things he said, to your point, was it really can take 20 minutes a day to connect with your kids. And he's like, and to have a true connection and not be on your phone, not filling up their time. Oh, but I took them here. No, finding an activity to do for at least 20 minutes. He goes so long. So to your point, that power of now, it could be 20 minutes cooking dinner together, but you're
Yeah.
together and you're focused on building that thing as opposed to yeah, having our mind be elsewhere. So thank you for mentioning that because I
Yeah.
was listening to the podcast and I was like, oh, I would love to have him on the show one day because same thing like me, like I love to, well, that's why I do what I do here too, like listening to people's different point of views on certain things and the mindset shift, right? So I love it. So thank you for
Yeah.
recommending that those
Those are
two
my two
books. They
favorites.
actually
Yes.
both sound great. Okay, let's
Yeah.
jump into it. So pediatrics, I read your bio and all the things, love it. Talk to me about why pediatrics on a high level scale. Like, what was it to kind of go into that, right? To help kids and help families in that way. And then I want to talk about your evolution into starting the practice that you currently have. So, as high level as you can, but why pediatrics? And then talk about why you kind of transitioned into the services that you offer today.
All right. So that's a loaded question. But I have my son graduating from high school. And one of the things I always tell them is that what you think you want to do with your life is going to change as you grow and as you are experiencing different things. And that holds true for me. I have a book that I wrote in third grade that said I was going to be a pediatrician. And I still have that book. And it's funny that I even wrote that. But when I went into college, I really thought that I was going to be a psychiatrist. I loved psychology. I loved biology. I loved the way the mind and our thinking affects our bodies. And I think that connection is so important when you're dealing with wellness, overall wellness. And so I really went in thinking I was going to be a psychiatrist. But I always loved kids. I've always been drawn to children. I love all the different ages. And when I went through my pediatric rotation, I just fell in love with pediatrics. I think I love the variety. We deal with from newborns till young adults. And there's so much variety, and it's so awesome to be a part of that change in a child's life. You're almost like a part of their family. You see them evolve, you see them with their disappointments, their challenges, you see them when they're sick, you see them when they're well, like they love to share their accomplishments, and families love to come and share what the children are doing. And you just feel like you're a part of it. And I really loved the variety of it, I think, more than anything, and being there for families. It's not just about the child, but it's about the family, and you get to really see growth. I mean, we change so much. I mean, from newborn to 21, we're like, it's like,
I'm sure.
it's totally different than adult medicine. Adult medicine is a totally different experience.
Sure.
So
So I know, so you worked in pediatrics for hospital, obviously Pediatric Associates. So now you have more of a concierge type service space. So talk to me about that. And then we're going to dive into like some tips and strategies and things for parents listening. But I really want to showcase first you transitioning from, I guess, the traditional model to what you're doing now. So talk a bit about that and why you chose to go this route.
yeah. So I've been practicing now for 24 years, which is crazy. And a lot has changed in pediatrics and pediatric healthcare in 24 years. And I've been a part of that. And in the last few years, there's been in pediatrics a big rush to push pediatricians to see patients faster and see more and more. And patients are waiting a long time in the waiting room. Sometimes they can't communicate with the doctor, and the appointments were really rushed. And this came really in my face during the pandemic. There was a lot of mental health issues during the pandemic, and it was tough because on top of wearing all your PPE and being so uncomfortable yourself physically, every other room that I had, it was depression, anxiety, just so many suicidal ideation, abuse. And it was hard because I felt like it was almost a disservice because I felt like I didn't have the time to really sit there and listen. And I felt like it's so hard for a child to say, this is happening to me. And that moment when you say that, what you need is someone that is listening. And I felt like I had 4 other patients waiting for me outside. And so it's hard because you have that pressure to see more patients and see them fast, but these are people and their patients and their families, and what you say, they're like hinging on what you say and what you're going to recommend, and it's hard. So it involved a lot of like stopping and going, and I'll be right back, and let me go see a patient, and I'll be right back. That was kind of like the way I kind of dealt with it, because it was the only way to just not say I have to go. So it was hard. I think the pandemic kind of made me realize that I've been doing this for a long time, and I kind of wanted to do things a little differently. So I was either going to stop practicing or I was going to do something different, because I really wanted to connect with families the way that I wanted to. So I wanted to create a practice where I could communicate with them directly, and they could ask me questions if they wanted to. They could text me, they could email me, and we could talk things through. I wanted to create kind of a practice that has continuity of care, because I think there's a lot of fragmented care right now in healthcare. You see one person on telehealth and another person, and then you go to see another doctor, and then that doctor's not available, and you're constantly seeing different people. And I think it's hard. It's hard for families, it's hard for kids, and it's hard for doctors too. So the purpose of the practice is really to create like a very small panel of patients where I get to know the families really well. They have direct access to me, and I actually am doing house calls. So I go to their house, and it's interesting because it's awesome for working moms, because it's hard when your child is sick, just knowing that you can pick up the phone and just ask the question, like, is this something I need to worry about, or is it not something I need to worry about? And I think that's one of my most important jobs, right? Trying to help you figure out, like, yes, you need to worry. No, you don't need to worry. I mean, like, I do that all day, every day. Like, let's watch this, or you got to go to the hospital, God forbid, or
Sure.
this is something that's nothing. It looks like something and it's not. Don't worry about it. We'll touch base
Yeah.
tomorrow, and you can go to work and not worry about it.
I think you said two things, but the first thing that kind of stuck with me is you mentioning that seeing the back-to-back patients. And one of the things that stuck out even more from that is like, then what about if you missed something? Because there's such a rapid pace, it's like, what if there was something there, like had you had the time, right? And hoping that didn't happen, but thinking of all the pediatricians out there. I mean, I know that's one of the cases with the moms that are in my community of talking about that and always seeking out that great pediatrician who will spend the time and take a minute, because yeah, what if you miss something you could easily bypass because you're not really focused, because you're worrying about, well, I have 4 other patients, and then you're a human being, so you have your own mental health that is affected by this, right?
Yeah.
So I love that you took that step to kind of offer this more concierge service. But the part two is that you mentioned the continuity of care. Can you talk to me about what exactly that is, and how having the continuity of care has made a significant impact of having that and has made a difference? Can you talk to my listeners about what that is exactly and how you hope to, I guess, help that to increase that through the services that you provide?
Yeah. So I think that traditionally, years ago, a family had a pediatrician. I remember when I was younger, my mom would call the pediatrician, and the pediatrician would talk to her, and they would talk it through, and it was comforting. Now it's become almost like it's just to be seen.
I gotcha. Yes.
It's not like always, it's not, I mean, I'm not talking about all practices, but many practices now, it's just for the child to be seen, right? So your
Yeah.
child is sick, your child needs to be seen. These are
Yes.
the people available to see your child. And yes, it works, because they may be able to diagnose and give you treatment, and that's okay. But the missing piece in that, and I saw it during the pandemic the most, was there's no trust there,
Yes.
right? So that takes time, and you're talking about your most precious thing in your life. So if you don't trust the person that's telling you what to do, then maybe you're not going to do it. A lot of times parents would see another provider, and then they would come and see me the next day. And I'm like, why are you here? They're like, well, because they told me to
Yes.
do that, but I'm not sure. I wanted you to see them. I just tell me that's the right diagnosis. So that goes to trust. The other thing is communication. When a family feels that they feel listened to, that's important as well. And that takes time. And when it's the same person that already knows your history, already knows your family, already knows your child, it's completely different. Like, you don't have to explain everything over and over and over again. I always tell people medicine is medicine, right? I could go practice medicine in Africa, and it's
It's
medicine. I mean,
medicine. Yeah,
our
it's
bodies
science.
are the same, right? I mean, our
Yes.
bodies are the same, but our circumstances are different, right? Our
Yes.
experiences are different. Our thoughts about medicine are different. Our health history is different. Our
Yes.
social means are different. Our support system is different. All of those things are come into play when you're talking about health, physical health and mental health. So understanding the family dynamics is important. And you can't get that from a quick visit because I have ear
Sure.
pain. Yeah, okay, it's the ear pain for that day. But what about the mom has to go to work and then she doesn't have a babysitter, and who's going to give the medicine to the child, and how does she make sure that the child's getting the right dose, and
Yes.
all of those things that come with the diagnosis. So it's complicated. It's not just, I feel like that connection is getting lost, and that's creating a lot of anxiety. It's creating a lot of anxiety for moms. That's why they're on Google and Facebook
I was just going to say,
asking
yes.
questions, and I cringe every time I see it because it makes me sad. Like, they're asking questions about their child's health to these random people that are giving advice with good intentions. I really
Sure.
do believe it's with good intentions, but it's not always right. And I have families that come in and they're panicked because they read something online, and they
Yes.
probably haven't slept for 3 nights because they saw it and now they're thinking about it over and
Or
over
because
again.
it happened to this child, it's thinking it's going to happen to theirs. But to your point, going back to the thing that you literally just said, well, what is this family's habit? Maybe the child has an underlying health condition. Like there's
Right.
so many things, and
Yes.
every family truly is different.
Right.
Okay, so I got the continuity of care, and I love that. I think the trust and communication is so important. Like those are like
Yeah.
easily like it starts from when you're picking your own provider for yourself, of who's going to be in the room with you, making sure
Yep.
you have someone to advocate for you. I had a midwife on the podcast, and she was like, look, I can't solve the problem on one little person of bridging that gap between midwifery care and the hospitals. She's based in Orlando. She's like, but what I can do is provide education. She's like, an education shows if a mother, whether she's in a hospital with an OBGYN, whatever it is, whatever her choice is, if she comes in more educated and that family comes in more educated, they're statistically 9 times out of 10 likely to have better outcomes in certain things because they are educated to then maybe tell if it does happen to be a new OBGYN because their other one had to go on vacation or an emergency happened. Oh, I have this. I had gestation, like to really educate in
Yes.
what they have and what they know. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, that's so poignant because the work you do, the work I do, and other people who are trying to bring awareness to certain things and have the education, that's where it stems from, right? And having these conversations is so important because the more you
A
can
hundred
then trickle
percent.
it down.
A
So
hundred percent.
I want you to talk to my listeners now. What are some of the pressing health concerns that you think are facing really children today? And what steps do you think parents can take to prevent these issues for their kids? Because I mean, you just said your son is graduating high school.
Yeah. My second
Oh,
one.
oh my
Oh, it's
goodness.
tough. It's tough. I'm
Yeah,
not
I'm
gonna lie.
sure.
It's tough. It's tough.
I'm sure. I mean, and I have a little guy going to first grade, and I'm like, whew.
I
So
know. I
I'm
know.
just to think of the juxtaposition of like the two different things. But yeah, so
Yes.
you've seen it. You're in it. You have two children that have been in it, right? Now they're kind of
Yes.
going off to some degree of now figuring themselves out. You have helped families. If you had to narrow it down and say, listen up, here's a podcast. I want to have a space to share this. What are some pressing health concerns or just concerns in general that you want parents to know about that they may not, or maybe if they don't really understand it? And what are some tips that you think you can give to help them address them?
I think the number one concern, and actually May is Mental Health Awareness Month, is mental health. And I think the problem with mental health awareness is that it's primarily focused on teenagers and older kids.
Yes.
And the problem is that's the result of not having the tools learned in early childhood. And
Yes.
I really wish that schools and programs would help little kids more how to handle their emotions, how to deal with disappointment, how to deal with when things don't go well. Just giving those tools, I mean, that we all need. I mean, adults need them too. Life isn't always great. And as much as we want our kids to be happy all the time, that's not life, right? I mean, there's going to be days that we're sad, there's going to be days that we're happy. And teaching our kids through example as well, like, I'm sad today, and this is why I'm sad. And that's normalizing all of the emotions, not just pretending to be happy all the time. Some days I'm tired, some days I'm angry, some days I'm sad, some days I'm super happy. And that's okay. And I love you no matter what. I love you the days you're sad. I
Yes.
love you the days you're happy. And that doesn't change. So I think that's something I wish would shift a little bit. And I wish that families would learn more the tools to help kids navigate those big emotions. And I see there's lots of thinking with that in the different cultures, I think.
Yes.
It's a very cultural thing when it comes to feelings and emotions. There's, of course, the traditional, like, oh, boys don't cry, or, oh, that's so silly, that doesn't mean anything. Like for kids, even though to you it might seem insignificant, for them, it's everything. So they might be very affected by something a child said in school that to you might seem like so dumb, like, oh, just
I'll get over it.
ignore him. Like, just
Yes.
ignore him. Like, just,
Yes.
you can't let people say things to you. But when you're little, you're trying to figure yourself out, right? You're trying to figure out who are you? And you're looking to the outside world to tell you who you are. So when someone says something to you, now that's in your head, right?
Yes.
Like, maybe I'm not smart, or maybe, and so, and the outside world is, it's not that it's more important, but sometimes it leaves a more lasting impression
Of
sometimes
course.
because you're the mom, right? So the kid's going to think, oh, but you just love me because you're my mom. You're going to, of course, you think I'm great. But so when other people say different things, and as they get older, that becomes even more important in the teenage years when they're talking about friends and their peers, how they're perceived, what other people think of them, that becomes very important of in the development of who they are. So I think that focusing on that when the kids are small is something that I wish more programs would do, more schools would kind of incorporate. And at home too. I mean, there's a whole section in pediatric development that teaches parents the different levels of social emotional development, like what's appropriate in the different ages. And it's awesome. And when a kid comes in for their checkup, right, we focus so much on the physical, right? What are they eating? What are they peeing? Are they pooping? Physical exam. And of course, that is super important.
Yes.
But there's other parts of us too, right? There's the emotional part, there's
Yes.
the social emotional part, and those questions are important too. And so if you know what is quote unquote normal that your child should or shouldn't be experiencing, it helps you to guide your focus, right? What tools is my son or my daughter struggling with? And how can I help them? And maybe they need help, or maybe they don't. Maybe they just need more experiences with other children in different environments. But being proactive about the social emotional development of a child is just as important as the physical development of a child. And you don't hear that much about that. You hear so much about physical development. Oh, is he sitting down? Is he standing? Is he chewing?
Is he growing?
Is he
Is his height?
pointing?
Is his weight?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, that's, of course, those are very important milestones because that's, we gauge development that way, but there's social emotional issues as well.
Think can be more important, right? Especially as they get older and they don't have the tools.
Right. So when you take a moment to look at those, if you help them early on, it will help them as they're older. And I
Yes.
think giving the parents the tools is important because, again, we don't know, right? If you don't know what you don't know. So if you make excuses for everything, oh, my son is just shy. Oh, he's introverted. Oh, he has temper tantrums. Okay, but why? Like, why do you think he's
Correct.
introverted? Why is he having temper tantrums? Getting to the root cause is so much more important than just labeling. I really try to shy away from labeling, and I try to encourage parents not to label their kids because they really hold on to those labels. I'm smart. I'm not smart.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm good at music. I'm good at sports. I'm good at it's their identity. It becomes their identity, like
Sure.
who they are.
I think that's so poignant. I think you and are in alignment. It's why I do what I do. And I've said this probably a million times on my podcast for people that listen to this that know me. It's the whole reason behind it. I think there's so much resources for kids. But to your point, I think it comes from the parents having to know better of what to do because our kids early on until, and I'm sure you can attest to this, they get to their teen years and then want to have nothing to do with their parents. But there
You
is
don't know
something to say
anything
for
by the
them.
teen
Yeah, you
years.
don't know anything exactly. But those formidable years of when they are looking to mom and dad, everything we do is that impact. So if we can teach ourselves things that we weren't taught as kids of how to manage
Exactly.
our emotions and help them. Case in point, my son was saying something and he was like, yeah, well, I don't feel happy all the time. And I said, no one does, buddy. And he was like, oh, like he thought that there was something wrong. So I was
Right.
like, well, can you tell me instances when you are happy? And we were driving in the car and he was like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, are you happy? And we went through the whole gamut of list. Are you happy with mommy and daddy? Yes. Are you happy here? No, I just do. And I'm like, okay. So we're getting through. And I'm like, but buddy, that's life. I have a whole accounting part of what I do. That's my day job. And I was like, listen, mommy is happy to do my Motherhood Village stuff, but mommy may not be the happiest when I have to do my accounting work, but I have
Exactly.
to do it. I was like, life is ebbs and flows. And I know he's only 6, but I'm hoping to understand. Like, I was like, I think he has this misconception that we have to be happy all the time. And I was like, nobody. There's some days mommy's just tired and I'm just content. I may not be happy, but I'm like, all right, it is what it is. And there's certain moments. I said, like when mommy sees you, when you wake up in the morning, that mommy's super happy that I get to see your little face of like having him understand that. Cause I was like, I don't know where he got the misconception that we think happiness is like, we're here. I'm like, I don't need him to be set up for failure with that. So there's something to say though, but I feel like I have learned over time to have some of those conversations because of talking to people like you, right? I've had, 190 conversations of people that have poured into me so I know better. So I hope to then help my moms in support groups like, listen, shift the conversation. So I think you saying mental health for small kids, for especially starting from adolescence and that young age is so important because, especially because we brought on technology and technology is a whole nother thing. The
Another
dopamine
conversation.
app, that's a whole nother conversation and how it affects their brain and
Yes.
how it is adding to the factor of them not having the patience that they once were. We live in a world right now where they know we can order off Amazon. My son knows to get my phone and get the app. So he's like, well, why can't we just order it now? We didn't grow up that way.
Well, I
So
saw it live as a pediatrician,
I'm
and I
sure.
can
So
tell
yeah,
you that
it's real.
it was scary because it's interesting because one of the first things that I ask a family when a child has speech delay is, do they use an iPad?
That hurts. Yes, yes,
And sometimes they'll look at me and like, well, yeah, like it's normal, right? Like, but we're talking about really small kids. Like we're talking about 18 months, 2-year olds. And I try to explain it in the context of it's almost like our kids have been guinea pigs. And it's really sad because they were thrown into this world where now all of a sudden there's these iPads and
yes.
phones, and they're colorful and they're bright and they're
Overstimulating.
designed to be
Yes.
addictive and overstimulating, right? So
Yeah.
I try to tell parents, right? So if that's what you're looking at all day long, if I take you to the park, it's kind of boring, right?
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
it's boring. Like I don't even like it's like grass and like
Yes.
it takes them a while to kind of understand that's not reality. Like does like I always ask myself that question, does an 18-month understand that's not the real world? Or
Yes.
do they think that what's in that iPad is real? Because we don't know, right? Their brains are developing. So that child might think that's the real world.
For
I
sure.
had a mom that told me that the child was watching the iPad so much that he was like reenacting the video in his sleep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And one of the things I tell parents is take it away for just do a trial. Like it's hard, like I'm not unrealistic and I'm very practical. I get it. Like it's sometimes it's so easy, right? You just get on the iPad, just watch the iPad for a little while. I'm gonna go take a shower. Like it's simple, right? Or when you're eating, or just to give yourself some time. I get it. And I'm not punishing parents who do that because I do the same thing. It's not, I'm not saying that, but when you're having an issue with your child, whether it's behavior, speech delay, do a trial. Give yourself 2 weeks and just say, okay, for 2 weeks, I'm going to take away the iPad. And some kids will hit their mom when they take away the iPad. They'll throw temper tantrums. They'll
Yes.
scream because they're addicted to it. That's a sign
Yes.
that they're
Of it.
addicted to
Of
it. It's
course.
not because they're misbehaving. It's just they need it.
They,
It's
it's a dopamine
designed.
fix.
It
Yes.
these people have created these things to make us addicted to it. So
Correct.
it's sad. They've used what we know about psychology and designed these products, right?
I know.
And these kids are like open books. And I'll tell you, when families do that, they're shocked at the
Yeah.
difference. They're
Yeah.
shocked. Like I had a mom who was working full time. Her son was not speaking at all. It was her fourth child. So it's not even like she was a new mom and she was a
Hmm.
very intelligent mom. And she was like, Dr. Vainder, I'm really worried he's not talking. Like, I think something's wrong. And she realized that the babysitter just had him sitting with the iPad all day.
Oh my God. No.
Yeah. So when she decided to take some time off of work to be with her son because she
To
could,
see what's going on.
thankfully,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and took like a leave of absence, and the child in the end of 6 months was talking, developing normal, like, and she was like, I can't believe, that it was that.
Yes.
So I saw that. I've seen it so many times because I lived the introduction of it, and I
Yes.
saw the transition of the kids before that and the kids after that. And now it's
Yes.
even more because now it's been around for longer. So now the smaller kids are
Yes.
getting it, because before it was the older kids. When it first started, it was a lot mostly the older kids.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No,
it's a problem.
it is a problem. And I think going back to your original point of like the mental health, which is why even more so, it's so important to have the tools to understand how to even talk about. I know one of the things I started noticing when my son had access to the iPad and he was watching these kids play with the toys, which we nipped that in the bud real quick. But I told him real quick, I was like, that's not real, right? And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, they're acting. Like I had to tell him it was a TV show because I didn't want him to think or compare his life to these kids that are like
Right?
in these massive homes with all these toys. And I'm like, no, it's a TV show. So I in essence lied to him, but it is. It's a TV show on YouTube that these people are putting together.
Yeah.
And he kind of looked at me and I was like, yeah, that's not real. They're not, it's a TV show and they're acting. Because for adults, if we do it to ourselves where we compare, imagine a kid to your point that they're like, wait, my room sucks now because this kid has all this stuff. We didn't have nothing to compare to really. We had some commercials that we could watch, but there's something to say ignorance is bliss. And we kind of had
Absolutely.
that. These kids
Absolutely.
don't have, they're exposed to all the things.
Yeah.
So trying to navigate that is difficult, but I think it's so important. So for those listening, yeah, like understanding, like it's not foo-foo to say of understanding the mental health of your young child because it is real. I mean, we've had conversations with my son too, like at 6 of, well, what if a bad guy comes in and understanding that there's a little anxiousness there, but, and that's okay. And that's a part of it, but working through that and saying, well, what do you think would happen if a bad guy came in, right? And not just dismissing it like, well, what do you mean? Mommy and daddy are here and we'll take care of it for you. Like it's something to say for that. I want to ask you before we part ways here, because I don't want to miss it. How can people connect with you? I know you have, like you said, you come to the homes and you offer great services, but how can people connect with you? How can people work with you? You mentioned social media, website, all the things.
So I probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I started writing a blog. Really, I did it because I felt like I couldn't tell parents everything I wanted to tell them when they came in for the 5 minutes. So I was like, I kind of have to like write this down. So I started writing a blog, and that's kind of how my website started. And it's www.drvcares.com. And so it started off as a blog. So I started kind of writing about different topics for parents, and it's really about physical and mental health of kids and really emotional support for moms. I also do like lots of guides for moms for free that I put on the website that are just kind of like how to prepare for different stages of the kids' life and our lives as well. So I try to just provide a lot of free resources for moms because I think there's a lot of misinformation online. And there's lots of physicians out there too trying to educate. And I think it's important that parents know who they're listening to and who they're taking advice from. Ask that question, like, who is this person giving me advice? Is it somebody who's trained in this? Because it's important where we're getting our information from.
For sure. And social media? Are you on?
I'm on Instagram. I try to like do little videos there too, try to educate. That's where the young families are, right? So I try to write practical things, like things that are some misconceptions online, misconceptions that we have about raising our kids, physical
Yes.
issues, mental health issues, and kind of give practical tips and ways to support moms too, because it's hard to be a mom, I can tell you. And being a pediatrician doesn't make it any easier to be a mom. I think it makes it harder sometimes.
Because you
Talking
know
about
too much
ignorance
and
is bliss.
yes.
I'm like,
Yes.
yeah, so yes. So
I love that. And I guess if a family wanted to work with you, do you have like a consultation? Like, do you do something like that? Like if they reached out and they're like, hey, Dr. V, like I may want to work with you, but I don't know how this works. Because it's a
so
new concept, right? It's a
I
new
do,
concept.
it is. And I offer the way that it's structured is every family that's interested has to schedule a meet and greet with me. And we just sit and talk about what they're looking for and what I offer to see if it's a good fit for them.
Love it.
And that's it. So usually any kind of first connection is going to be through a meet and greet virtually, and we can just kind of connect and understand their needs and mine to see if it's in
Perfect.
line.
Yeah, of course. And I know I didn't get a chance to ask you this, but I would imagine like that is part of the process of looking for the right pediatrician, right? Having the conversation. And it's okay if you're not the one or go to the next one or the next one. Like I think parents have to know, like, to your point, who are you taking advice from and care? Excuse me, I don't know why. Oh, maybe it's my lunch. But I think it's something to know and to know that it is okay to have multiple interviews, to seek
Yes,
out
I
to, because
think
to your
parents
point,
should. I
yes,
actually
go ahead.
encourage
Yes,
parents when they're pregnant, I tell them, schedule several meet and greets, prenatal visits, ask questions, because when you ask questions, you get a feel. I'm a big person on feelings. So the feeling I feel when I'm talking to you,
yes,
right? The feeling I feel like, did I feel like they were listening to me? Did I feel like we made a connection? And maybe ask the same question to all the doctors. Like if there's something during
I
your
love that.
pregnancy that you've been
Yes,
worried about, like let's say, I don't know, they're monitoring something on the ultrasound or something came up with you that you're worried about, anything. Ask all of them the same question and
I
see
love
how
it.
they respond and see what resonated with you. Where did you feel like, oh, this, I loved how they answered that. Like I felt really supported, or I felt like they were really listening. Those types of things, that's the point of the prenatal visit. A lot of people kind of are like, I don't need a prenatal visit. Oh, my friend told me to go see Dr. So-and-so. And
No,
I tell families all the time, I worked with some amazing doctors and we all practice medicine the same way, but our personalities are different, right? So I may be perfect for one family and another patient might be perfect for my colleague because maybe they have a similar background or connection and
yes,
they felt more comfortable with her style. And I never take offense to that. I always tell parents, I'm not, this is about you, right? So you need to find who you're comfortable with,
love it.
because that's what's going to help you and it's going to help your child.
Yes,
Because so and so is the one that everybody goes to, it may not be the one for you.
yeah.
So
I say that now too for schools. Now that we kind of went through the whole gamut of kindergarten, I was like, oh, okay, like I need to do a blog on this. I need parents to know. Stay away from the Facebook groups. I get it, but there's so much bias, subjective opinions when you're picking pediatricians, when
oh
you're
yeah.
picking schools. Do your own research, tour all of the schools. Then, yeah, I mean, if you want to get some feedback, absolutely, right? I mean, there's some things I wish I knew a little bit more about my son's current school that we had to find out after. Absolutely. But do your research and what school might be best for one might not be. What does your child need, right? Are they really thriving in one way? Like it's so, but again, we don't talk about that. It's like, wait, no, wait, what is the best schools? Give me the list because I want. It's like, well, yeah, but also like look at the different programs. Like I wish I would have followed my own advice when we were searching, because even the school we are transitioning him to, I'm like, okay, it's a great school and I loved it when I went. But then I found out about some others and I'm like, oh yeah, like if I knew better, I would have done the research of like all the schools, listened to all the different programs they had in my area, and then made a sound decision based on what works for our family. So there's
But you
something to say,
know,
I think. But go ahead.
there's something about what you said, and I think that this is super important for parents, is you can always change your mind.
Yes.
Always. Sometimes like parents, they're so hung up on like the school or the after school program or the coach or because that's the best coach or because that's the best teacher. And maybe it's not for your child. So, and that's okay. You can
Yep.
change your mind. Like, and I think that's important to give moms that permission to just
Yes.
say, change it. Like,
We're going to pivot and try something new.
right.
Absolutely. And I love how you said that about looking for because the care, because I think it's important because yeah, I think if you go in and you get a happy feeling like, oh my gosh, yeah, me and this doctor connected, then you know every appointment after, if you are feeling a little, you may be more willing to then share more because you've had
Yes.
now with a connection as opposed to, well, I don't know. Oh, no, we didn't really vibe. And then now you're stuck. And then, yeah, then
Yeah.
you're like, oh, but my child's already been seeing him or her for a year. Do I really want to change? Then you just settle, right? Now you're
Right.
settling when, to your point, this is like your most precious cargo. So you want to make
Yeah.
sure that someone pointed out on a previous podcast, like your advisory board, and you want to make sure your advisory board for your kid is like the best of the best for your family,
Well,
not
it's
necessarily
personal.
your
It's
family.
it
Exactly.
has to be tailored for the family. We're all
Yes.
different. And like I said, we're all different. We come from different backgrounds. We have different experiences. So how we feel is different. How we feel about everything is different. And so I can't give the same advice to every mom. It doesn't work
Oh,
like that.
I
It's
love
like,
that.
it
Yes.
doesn't work. That's why when you see someone on Facebook advise something, what does that mean? That may not be the case for that mom or that child. So it has to be tailored. And that's where going back to the continuity of care, seeing the same person, having it's almost like a guide
Yep.
that you can talk to and talk through about things to help you.
I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. V, for coming on. I cannot wait to
Thank
share this
you.
episode. And yeah, I can't wait that now when my mom's asked, I'm like, yep, got a couple, because to your point, like of the arsenal of different pediatricians and be like, listen, if you're
Yes.
looking for some good resources, like here, let me share them with you. So thank you so
Oh,
much for
thank
coming on,
you.
for sharing great tips. And it
And I
was a
love what you're
pleasure to connect.
doing. I really
Thank
do. I
you.
love what you're doing. Amazing.
I appreciate it. Have a good one.
All
Talk
right. Take
soon.
care. Bye bye.